And that's parenting without fearing, parenting with that freedom to know that, okay, what you instill in your kids, they will be able to be thinkers, they will be able to process stuff out, and eventually reap the right results.
This is Dadography, a podcast with stories and insights on fatherhood from dads around the globe, dedicated to providing you with the tools and tips to become a better dad.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Dadography podcast. My name is Vic Brown. I'm your host for today. And today we have a very special guest. Actually, I'll tell you a really short story. When Corey came to me with the idea of starting this podcast, it usually starts with you present it to friends and, you get a list of people who you think will be good candidates to interview with regards to fatherhood. And this person that we are about to interview today was top on my list. So we're open to have a very good conversation, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get some good insights from this one. So stay tuned and let's see what we get. Before we start, if you're new to the podcast, please like us, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and all of the main podcasting platforms. We are there. Just look for Dadography Podcast and you will find us. So let's get started. Dennis, how are you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing all right today, just relaxing here in the beautiful state of Maryland, just enjoying the heat and the
Yeah,
rain.
yeah. I'm in New York City right now, man, and the heat is
Yeah,
really intense, man, to say the least.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and I live in Panama, man. So imagine where it's hot all year round.
yeah,
Imagine if I'm complaining about the heat, it's serious, man.
yeah. It's been the last crazy 3 days as far as the weather goes, man.
Dennis, his full name is Dennis Powell. Forgot to mention that. Dennis, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, man?
I'm Dennis Powell. I was born in Panama City, 1969, the 3rd of November to be exact. That's a big to do thing for me, being that the 3rd of November is Panama Independence Day. So I take a lot of pride in that. So, yeah, I'm born in Gargas Hospital over on the Canal Zone side and migrated to the United States when I was 12 years old. So I've been here for quite a while. I'm been married for 22 years and 4 kids, and yeah,
Wow,
that's pretty much it.
that's great. That's great. And their names?
We have Dennis Jr. We got Grace, Rachel, and Emmanuel. 2 boys and 2 girls.
You even at the playing field, man. That's good, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's that's what's up,
yeah,
man. Two
yeah,
boys and two
and
two girls.
and
That's good. That's
and
good.
two
That's a good
girls.
even. That's a good even playing field. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
we like to do a little bit of analysis with regards to, a person's fatherhood style as far as, why they father the way that they father.
Hmm.
So, our first question is usually asking our guests to take us back to how he was fathered. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your father?
Well, my father dynamic is a little, sketchy, if I may use that word for lack of a better word, because,
Okay.
my mom was married to my father, who, when I was born, didn't play a role in my life. Not even to say a little bit. He didn't play a role, period. But then they ended up getting a divorce, and my mom remarried to who I considered my father today.
Okay.
But back then I wanted my biological father to be in my life. I really didn't pay attention to what was in my life because I wanted my biological father. I had some questions. I had a void that only my biological father could fill, even though I had a great dad in my life in the role of my stepfather. But I didn't want that. I was still searching out for my dad. And so that never happened because as life would have it, my father ended up dying. And then I ended up having to turn to what was there always, which is my dad, the man that my mom remarried to and has been the constant dad in my life.
That's an interesting point that you make, that you were actually seeking some sort of connection with your dad. You wanted to know what happened, why wasn't he there in your life. Do you know at what age more or less you started having those thoughts or those ideas?
I would say at a very young age, because I mean, for boys, it's always that intrigue. For boys, you want that identification. You want that early. You want to know and to understand where you come from, and you can make that connection at an early age. I would say at about 5, I started really having those questions because I understood that something wasn't right. I just knew it in my being. I just knew something was not right. Young at that age, but I knew something wasn't right. And then the older I got, the more questions I had. The more
Hmm.
questions I wanted answered. That my dad, who was there, and I honor him as my dad today, he couldn't answer. Now he could give me love and buy things and support and do all those things, but there's questions that you have that only a father, that biological father, can answer for you, or mannerisms or ways that you're looking for. Hey, where did I get that from? Why is this or why is that? And my dad, who I consider a dad today, could not answer that.
So your point was basically trying to figure out, where you come from,
Right,
and
right,
and by knowing where you come from, you have a pretty good idea as far as where you stand today, why you are the way you are, and
sure.
where you might be tomorrow. That's an interesting perspective. That's very
Yeah,
interesting.
it's validation. Every child desires that, wants that, is looking for that. And anytime that's missing, that can send that child into a downward spiral if not addressed by that father at some point.
Right, right. Now, this other man that you call your dad today, who raised you, who was there for you, who
Yeah.
may not have had the answer to all of the questions, I'm sure was able to answer some of those questions. Now,
Mhm.
would you say that the way that you father today, would you say that he had an impact in that, whether positive or negative, or the way that you are today, even as a husband, would you say that he had an impact in that?
Yeah, he has the whole, I mean, definitely, because I mean, without him, I wouldn't have a platform or a foundation in which way to go now. So remember, it wasn't that he wasn't playing a role. I just didn't want it from him. You understand what I'm saying? I just was looking somewhere else from someone else, but he was still there playing it. So I still had something that I could see. I had something that I could watch, and I could, it was still teaching me some valuable lessons because I saw him love my mom. I saw him, I mean, go to work. I saw him provide. I saw him just be a man of his word, a stand-up man. And today that definitely is who I am because of that.
Right.
It definitely played a major role.
Right. So you saw love, you saw discipline, you saw
Yes.
responsibilities, and those are some of the traits that you have today
y-
as a father.
Yes, as a father. Definitely after I got older, and even after the passing of my dad, and I really started to look at really what's there. Like, hey, this is the one constant thing that's a part of my life. My dad, he has been there, and then I just started to look back and see things and was able to glean from that, and then it propelled me to being the man who I am today.
It's amazing how much you can basically, just look back on and analyze in hindsight and say, you know what, wow, the situation was not as bad as I thought it was, or the situation was actually, XYZ. But when you're living in the moment, it's very hard to put yourself out of that place and look at it.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of young guys today, they're angry. They're angry at their dad because they're not there. And because of that anger, they don't see what's there. That anger, that frustration, that agitation, it don't cause them to see what's available to them. You may have a grandfather who may be playing a great role as a father, but you can't see that because you mad at your dad.
That's a great point, actually. Our main host, Corey, actually, he was raised by his grandfather, for
Right,
the most part, so he had a great impact in his life.
right,
I lived with my grandfather for many years of my life, and he also had a great impact in my life.
right, right. But a lot of times you can't see that in the moment. That was what was happening with me. I couldn't really appreciate my dad because I was so angry and frustrated at my biological father that I couldn't appreciate. It wasn't until after I really got to see what was there, when I made peace with certain things, that, hey, my biological father, he's not. And then he died. So I was like, hey, you know what? Let's look at what we have, really take a look and be appreciative. And that's when I started to really grow, you know, by having that good foundation.
Understood. If you had to describe your fatherhood style, how would you do it? Like, what would you say is your fatherhood style?
Going back to what I saw, there are things that shape us. So you have a culture. Culture shapes us. History, religion, and you have politics. Those things shape us. So I think that the history that I had with my father, that history is definitely something that shaped me uh, throughout the years. And so my style is similar, but then again, also every day evolving, learning more. Adding to what he gave, adding to what he placed in my life by his teaching or his words, but keep adding to it, because I found out that our parents, they got what they got, but they stayed there. It's like they never evolved.
Oh, they
Certain
might not have the access to information that we have today. We have a lot of access to a lot of information that basically at the tip of our fingers.
That too, but a lot of times, and I say this to a lot of the young men, I said, listen, your parents brought you from maybe A to F, and you got to appreciate that, because a lot of our parents, when we think about it, like I'm talking about my parents, education wasn't something that they could really, buy into for other reasons. Maybe, they had to take care of a family, they had to do this, they had to do that. There were certain things that was going on. So they didn't have a well, rounded education, if I may. So that caused them not to be able to have the mindset to broaden themselves a little bit more. And so, all of that plays a role in how you continue to advance your parenting style. The information, you're correct that the information we have today is definitely at our fingertips. But I know in my scenario, my parents, and it's not a dig on them, they did the best that they could to bring me to this point. But the kind of education they receive, it wasn't the best, where they could continue to grow in reading and getting certain understanding. So I try my best now. They brought me to this point to educate myself more and read more and get some clarity and understanding and developing something, so that my parenting style will not remain stagnant, but it's evolving every day.
That's a great point. Perhaps another thing that was happening with your parents is that they were too busy actually trying to figure out life themselves.
Yes, 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 yes. And that's the part of working, having to go out and provide now, because you got a family. So, they had to go out and do some things. My mom, she went and she did higher learning, and she got some stuff. Same thing with my dad. He ended up doing some things and ended up turning out good for him and certain
Right.
things, but there's still some things that I feel that if they was at a had a better or a different outcome, they would have been able to continue to evolve. And I say that because when I was being raised by my parents parenting style never evolved. Everything was beat. Everything was I'm gonna beat you today, I'm gonna
Right,
beat you
right,
tomorrow, I'm gonna
right,
beat
right,
you
right,
next week, I'm gonna
right,
beat you
right, right.
everything was
Yeah.
that kind of a rigid.
I was having a conversation with a good friend a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about that, about how parents, used to discipline before,
Hmm.
and the way that I explained it to him, the way that I see it is basically, you have a set of tools
Mm-hmm.
that you use to parent. So you have these steps that you're going to take to basically have your kid be a certain way as far as behavior or school. So if the kid is basically not doing some things that you want him to do, or doing wrong things, you might start by talking to him, then you might start by punishing him, and then so you have this like a tool bag of
Mm-hmm.
options of things that you do. And the way that I see it, some of our parents, that tool bag is very small.
Right.
That tool
Right.
bag is like, okay, I'm going to tell you this one time, and if
Right.
after that one time you still don't listen, okay, I'm going to hit you.
Right.
Because they have
Right.
a very small tool bag. Whereas we today now, like you said, with the information that we have,
Yes. Yes.
with evolving, our tool bag is like, for us to get to that stage, is like, wow, that is an extremely
Exactly.
ridiculous situation. Like, maybe your life is in danger, and because your life is in danger, now we have to take a different course of action.
Right, right, right. Exactly. I realized that a lot of things that they did out of fear, man. They were afraid that you ended up in the same spot that they ended up,
Wow.
or you were going down in the wrong way. So fear, that creeps in there when they see you going down the wrong path. So what they do is they do what they saw being done to them or what they experienced.
Right. Now, Dennis, you mentioned actually quite a few times. You mentioned that you say some things a lot to a lot of the young men. What young men are you exactly referring to?
Well, as number one, being in the field of counseling first, I did mental health counsel for over 25 years. I did
Okay.
from a side of young kids for Shepherd Pratt. I worked for them for 10 years. And then I went over to the adult section and I did case management for Virginia, Loudoun County Mental Health. And I work with adults in that setting. And I had a lot of groups. I did many, many different groups, groups from how to maintain proper boundaries, social skills, different groups. So these groups would have young men in them, and a lot of times we
Right.
would have what they call breakout sessions. And a lot of
Right.
times you would find young men, especially when I work with Shepherd Pratt. Shepherd Pratt is based out of Baltimore, and if you know anything about
Yeah,
Baltimore,
Baltimore is tough.
Baltimore's there's some neighborhoods in Baltimore that
Right.
you get
Right.
these kids that are coming out, and I noticed a pattern, and the pattern was lack of fathers.
Wow,
And
that's
so,
interesting.
yeah, the pattern, and I say it, if nothing that I say, stick with whoever's listening. The woes of our society today, the issues of our society today, you can trace them back to the absentees of fathers. Anytime the father is removed from the equation or from that role in the family and the child's life, you have what we have today: anger, killings, just a whole lot of stuff that we see in our community. Remove the father, and that's what we have today. So those groups allowed me to talk to a lot of young men who would say, "Hey D, man, I'm just pissed, man. This, that," and it all goes back to the father and the role that now the mother has to play, or the grandmother, because in many instances in them young men's life in Baltimore, it wasn't no mother or father. You know who was raising them kids? Grandmas who had
Right.
already raised those children and moved on with her life, trying to live off her retirement life and enjoy. She
Right.
couldn't enjoy it because now she was raising her children now.
Right. That is
Mhm.
actually one of the pillars of our podcast. That is one of the things that we do believe in. We do believe that fathers have the ability and the capacity to change their kids, and therefore
Yes.
change the world.
Yeah,
So
that's
that is
it.
that is definitely one of the things that we really believe in, and one of the things that we follow in this podcast. That fathers, with their presence and
Hmm.
being involved and being great fathers, they really do have the ability to change the world.
Definitely. Definitely.
Dennis, how old are your kids?
Junior is going to be 30. Well, not, he just turned 29 in March. I thought it was 30. I was talking to my wife. She was like, no, it's 29. So we just agreed to disagree. It's 29.
Okay, okay.
I'm not going I'm going to give up. I was saying 30. She
Hey
says
man, you can't
29.
forget how old is your son, man. Come on, man.
Yeah.
And
But,
he's a
but
junior, man. Come on, man. Come on, man.
yeah,
What's going
yeah.
on?
Yeah, no, it's 30. It's 30, man. It's 30. Believe me, it's 30. Grace, well, I know Grace, she just had a birthday Friday. She turned 21. And then Rachel is 17 and Emmanuel is 15. He's gonna be 16 in September.
Walk me through your mindset when you first found out that you were about to be a dad. This is your first child. Were you ready and up for the task?
I wasn't ready. I wasn't
Hmm.
ready. I was in the streets, living in Brooklyn. I wasn't no drug dealer or nothing like that, but I was in the street. Whatever came up, I was with it. Just to
Hustling,
get,
hustling,
yeah,
hustling,
just to get
whatever.
a few dollars. Get
Right.
some money in my pocket. And I think, and I don't think, I know that Junior saved my life because when his mother told me that she was pregnant, that changed my life. That really just changed me because I had made a vow. Nobody knew about this vow, but I made a vow to myself. I said to myself, the day I have a kid, I will never let him feel what I felt when I found out that my dad walked out on my mom and myself. I could have made a vow in a different way or lived a different way, or my dad walked out on me, I'm gonna walk out on my kids, or just live like that. But made a different one. I said, the day I have my child, I will never, never, I don't care what happens, I am going to be in that child's life forever.
You know what, Ness? I have to salute you for that one, man. Really.
Hmm. Hmm.
We had a guest a couple of episodes ago, actually last season. His name is JC, and we actually used this quote several times because it's such a good quote. He said, "Whether you had a good father or whether you had, not such a good father, you have the perfect blueprint for how to be a father. If you had a good father, basically you just have to emulate what that good father did in your life. And if you had a terrible father or did not
Right.
have a father, you know how bad it felt. So you
Exactly.
know what to do to not make your child feel that way."
Yeah, and that's what it did to me. It just shook me to the core that I said I could not make another life that I helped bring into this world feel that pain. That was not happening on my watch. So when my wife came to me and said, she wasn't my wife at that time, when she came to me and said, I'm moving to North Carolina, I said, we move into North Carolina. And that's what I did. A lot of people didn't understand that move because they were like, oh man, he crazy, he lost it. But I was like, I care less about anything I got here. My son means more to me than any street, anybody, mother, father, whoever don't agree. They don't have to agree. This is what I'm doing, and this is what I did, because I wasn't gonna be no father from, like, oh, living in New York and my son living in North Carolina. I would, no, sir, that was not happening. I know that kind of pain. I've been through that pain. That pain, you don't recover from that pain that easy. You could, but it takes a lot of work. So I wasn't gonna do that. That wasn't gonna happen on my watch. So I moved.
Right.
I moved. I did what I needed to do.
Wow, that is an awesome story. I honestly didn't know that story. For those of you who don't know, Dennis is actually my cousin. I do know some things about his life, but I did not know that was the reason why he moved to North Carolina
Yeah, I mean,
when he made that move.
think about it, Vic. My whole family's in New York. Who do I have in North Carolina? I don't have nobody out there. And that was deemed crazy. This dude done lost his mind. He on something. I remember the conversations. Oh my God, what is he doing? And they didn't understand that pain drove me to say, no way. I'm not sacrificing my son on the altar of that pain. I'm not doing that. So if I gotta be called crazy, hey, there you have it. But I'm jumping.
Hey fellas, just so you're aware, you can stay up to breast and up to speed on every episode by following us on YouTube. In the search bar, just type the Dadography podcast. When it comes up, select the subscribe button. You'll be sure to be up to date on all of the tools and tips that we get from fathers around the globe.
Now, Dennis, let me ask you this. You said Junior is 30 years old, Grace
Uh-huh.
21 years old, Grace.
Yeah.
That is an 11-year gap, man. Can you explain a little bit about that?
I never wanted kids. Me personally, I didn't want any kids. I just always wanted to be, if I'm married, I'm married, a wife, no kids. You got to be responsible. You got to be in it. So,
Right,
once Junior came, I was like, okay, let's see how we can just minimize this and just one child. But then I remarried. Junior is
okay,
from my first relationship that I had in
okay,
New York, with another woman. And so later on, once we moved to North Carolina and we start to live and be together, I figured, hey, you know what? I'm here. We're doing certain things. Let's just get married. But again, young, and I explain it from my side. I never explain it from the woman's side. Somebody would have to interview her. I wasn't ready for the married game because
right,
even though I had Junior and I committed to move there and be in Junior's life, I was still dealing with my demons. I still had some things that I didn't resolve. So every little chance I got, I would step out. I would
right,
step out, and that put a real heavy strain on the relationship. We ended up getting a divorce after 3 years of the marriage. I stayed in North Carolina. I was still there, with my son. And then he was old enough where he could understand a little bit. He could know that I was there. And then I met my wife today, and
right.
so that 11-year gap is explained by that I met my wife today. I remarried. We didn't have any kids. We remarried, and then Grace came. So that's where the 11 years come in. Because what happened is that it's so funny. We moved to Maryland, and Junior would come to spend the summer with us because again, my son was going to be a part of my life. No matter if I had to go up, come down, at this time I'm willing to do what I need to do. And when Junior will leave, my wife will get sad. And she was like,
Wow.
I can't deal with this. We have a son in a moment, and then he's gone home, and the house is empty. So
Right.
I put it like this: she actually twisted my arms to have these kids. I didn't want to participate.
You got to be careful with that, man. You got to be careful with that, man.
Nah,
You go, you go,
she's not in the
you go.
house, so
You're
I
gonna
can
get
say
yourself in trouble, man. Hey, this is going on the internet, man. This is public, man. You're gonna
that.
get yourself in trouble, man. Be
No,
careful with
no,
that,
no,
man.
no. I really did. I saw the sadness in her face every time Junior would leave. And they listen, this is the truth, so help me God. When you find someone who is a nice woman, man, try your best. Even the first wife and the second wife, I could have done better. I'm doing better today. But I'm telling you, she loved Junior like he was her own. And it used to break my heart to see when he was like, okay, summertime is up and he got to go home. She would literally cry because he was going back home. They have a real strong relationship even till today. So yeah, that's where the 11 years came in, the difference, the gap.
Now, does he have a strong relationship with his sisters? Even though they are from a different woman. How is that
Yes,
relationship?
yes, very, very strong. Because again, we're that nurturing, door open policy. Come talk to us.
Was there something that you remember specifically doing or not doing for that bond to form? Because a lot of times we have brothers and sisters that don't have necessarily all the same mother and father, and they develop this kind of resentment, maybe because they're in a different situation. My father is over there when he should be here. Do you remember ever having to have that conversation, or ever having to sit down and build that bond, or was that something that was just generic for the most part?
Generic because of that 11-year-old gap. Because remember, we were in Junior's life. We were nurturing him. He saw us consistently, treat him in a consistent manner. Never like, oh, we busy this weekend, we can't, he can't. No, we were playing that role. So when Grace came along, it was just a continuation. we never stopped getting them. Like if so we got a new child now. So Junior, see you later. No, we was just as intentional with him. If we went to the store and let's say we bought a bag of chips for Grace, we bought a bag of chips for him. We treated everything just as one. So he never felt like we love her more than love him. We always included him. If we went away on trips, we try to include him on those trips too. Hey, when are you getting out of school? What's going on? What's happening? And it was good to have a wife that encouraged. I remember she had already loved Junior, and she wanted Junior to be a part of. So that transition was very very easy. It's never been, oh, that's your child over there. And some scenarios are like that. Some relation, oh,
Right.
that's your child with that. And no, 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 I didn't have that. Thank God I didn't have that issue. I didn't
Right,
have that
exactly.
issue.
That is awesome. That is
Yeah.
unconditional love. That is the
Yes,
true
yes.
definition of unconditional love.
Yeah, that's what
And
it
that is
was.
now
Mm.
Junior 30, Grace 21, Rachel 15,
16,
16, I'm
17,
sorry,
17.
17. Wow,
Eh,
Emmanuel 15. Most of them, ready to almost ready, actually, almost ready
mhm.
to, go out there and live their life. How are you managing the relationship with them now, as they're growing older, because as they're growing older, they become more and more independent, and
Mhm.
they don't necessarily need you the way that they needed you when they were younger. How are you managing that? Do you have a strategy for that now as they get older?
Yeah, I mean, I went from hand holding to supporting now. All I do is support. I'm playing a supporting cast now. Hey, what it is you need to succeed. What it is you're thinking on. What's the vision? What's the plan?
You've become a facilitator basically now.
Exactly, a facilitator, right? Yeah, a facilitator. I'm just trying to facilitate because now they're thinking more. They're involved in more things, different friends. I was telling my wife, my 21-year-old, I saw her today for the first time in almost a week and a half because
Okay.
she was in Houston. She came from Houston. She was in Atlanta. She came from Atlanta, put her suitcase down. The next day she's flying out to Houston for her birthday. She came back. I just seen her. Now next week she's going to Panama. I have to be a facilitator. What do you need? Oh, I need you to drop me off to the airport. What do you need? I need you to pick me up. What it is, I have to facilitate now versus being this person like hands on. And I have to be okay with that role because they're moving into that independence now, more independence. So
Right.
what it is I need to do to help them get to where they need to get to. And that's what I'm doing now, along with my wife. That's what we're doing now. That's the role we're playing now.
And I like the way you put that. You've gone from hand holding
Yes.
to basically just, facilitating things for them. That is an excellent example. Do you ever miss, the hand holding part of it, or are you pretty much comfortable with the role that you're playing right now?
No, 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 no. Hand holding is always in the back of your mind. For instance, with facilitating, you're going to see your daughter come home and try to explain a relationship with a guy. And
Right, exactly.
your mind is to go back to hand hold, but you can't hand hold. You can't hand hold because if you hand hold, even though you know that relationship is not good for her, all you're going to do is push her in the arms of that guy. The
Right.
more you try to resist that, the more you're pushing her towards that. So what you got to do is facilitate. Hey, what it is you trying to achieve with this young man? Where are you trying to go? Because eventually, what you know or what you feel, if you facilitate, it will manifest. If you know that it ain't no good, right? And you
Right.
facilitating, eventually the true person gonna reveal. They're gonna show up, and then she's gonna be like, "Oh man, okay, I'm going down this wrong road. Let me turn back. Let me go talk to my dad." My dad felt something, but he didn't really get in and hold my hand. He just said to me, be careful. Now I see what he's trying to say. And so a lot of times, what I've noticed with situations when you handhold, you force the child or the person right into the thing that you didn't want them to get into because you're trying to hold their hands.
Right, exactly. Right. So you're basically saying it's a more of a be careful as opposed to don't do this or do this.
Yes, right. Just be careful and keep your eyes open. And
Right.
you can even give examples of your relationships and how you used to be in certain instance, and let them make the decision. Let them play it out, and then they come back, oh dad, you were saying that, and when you said that, I didn't really think about it, but this happened, and lo and behold, it worked out. And that's parenting without fearing, parenting with that freedom to know that, okay, what you instill in your kids, they will be able to be thinkers, they will be able to process stuff out, and eventually reap the right results. Eventually. You're going to have to just wait it out.
It's interesting that you use that phrase, parenting without fearing, because like you said earlier, one of the things that your parents, your mom told you, as to why you were raised the way that you were raised, that she was scared, she was afraid
Yes.
of what could happen to you, so now that
Yeah.
you basically bring it back to say, you know what, we could do this without being afraid.
Right. You could. Because my biggest fear could be, oh, my daughter gonna get pregnant. So what I gotta do is shut the door, put the burglary bar on. Don't make no guys get you think about dads when they think about their girls. I ain't gonna let
Right.
no boy, I'm gonna buy my gun.
Right. Facts.
What are
Facts.
you buying a gun for, dude? What
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
Like, so that
Yeah.
means you're gonna shoot every man that talks to your daughter? No, you have to facilitate and allow them to make decisions based on your style of raising them, which is an open door kind of a system where you can come and talk to me. And as you make those decisions, you yourself, you will get to find out, oh, wow, this ain't no good. Oh, wow. And then they'll come back and say, hey, you know what? I made this decision and hey, we still good. But fearing is not the key.
That is definitely one that's going in my toolbox. I have to say, my son
Yeah,
is not there yet, but this is definitely one of those insights that's going in my toolbox. Parenting without fearing, letting basically the child make the decisions when it's time for them to make those decisions, and you
right.
basically become a facilitator, as opposed to a hand holder. Absolutely.
Yeah, see, we've been with our kids. We drive the car for so long that when it's time for them to drive, we can't get out the driver's seat,
Right.
and that's so messed up because eventually they are okay to drive. They're gonna have a little crash in there, and I'm just using the car as an analogy. They're gonna
Right.
have a
Got
little
you.
bumps, crashes here. They're gonna dent it up a little bit, but think about what we were doing. We probably
Yeah.
just totaled the doggone car. You know what I mean? We probably just wrecked the whole car. And now with our kids, we want to be like, oh, come on, don't, man, get out of here. You got to think of along the lines of what you were doing when you were their age, man. You you
Yeah.
you you
Right.
you ended up driving a bicycle because you don't crash the whole car.
Yeah.
It's total.
But
You know?
that's probably what feeds into a lot of parents' fear, though, the fact that they knew
Yes,
what they were doing at a certain
yes,
age. And I'm like, wow, I know
yes,
what I was doing when I was 17,
yes,
16. So man, I need to be
yes,
careful, so that's probably what's
yes.
actually feeding into that fear. Thank you for that insight, Dennis. Very good insight.
Mhm.
We're gonna move on now to a part of the show we'll call a self-assessment.
Uh-huh.
And basically, you get to grade yourself, man. I don't know how good you did in school and stuff like that, but you have a chance to grade yourself now. What are some of the fatherhood challenges that you face or that you're currently facing? What did you face in the past that, what, I didn't really do this right. I should have done this that way instead of this way?
The challenges that I have now is basically coming to the realization that my kids are grown now, man. The hand holding days, they were the good days because you knew where they were. You knew you brought them home, they home. They can't just get up and do. And the challenge now is to grow with them now. That's the challenge now. Reading and developing and growing, learning more skills, putting more tools in the toolbox for the next leg of the journey, listening more of the mind functioning versus emotion, and just sitting back and being a different type of father now, getting into more of that foundation for them now. the dad that doesn't have a lot of counsel now, just the dad that hears more now, listens more now. There's another role that I have to play now. The dad that can be upset but don't say nothing, because if you say something, you might wound deeper now. Be more tactical with my dad strategies versus, that dad that could be more straightforward. Now you have to learn how to be a different kind of dad. That's more challenging now because the culture. You come from a culture where I tell it like it is, and I would tell her, and I would, no, you you just have to. Is like that boxer that just now, instead of using the right, he learns to jab now, and he
Right.
learns to move and bob and weave. You know what's been the saving grace? Getting around dads who are doing it and been doing it for a while. They have grown kids, and my circle expanding now, and meeting more good dads who can give me some more tools to put in the toolbox, like you say. That's a good way to look at it. And I think that I'm doing I'm not failing. My grades are coming up higher.
I got you. I
That's
got
all
you.
I can say. That's all I can say. I'm bringing my grades up higher. I'm going from a
Okay.
C to going higher now. Yeah,
Okay, got you, got you. Well, Dadography podcast is definitely one of the places where fathers can come and listen to our conversations and get a lot of insights and a lot of valuable information. We have fathers from around the globe who've been on the show, and they talk about what they do, what works for them. So what you're doing now, communicating with other fathers and getting
yeah,
information from other fathers, that is actually the goal of the podcast.
yeah, yeah.
You have this source of information where you can come and listen and see what worked for them and see what didn't work for them and apply it to your life or maybe not apply it to your life. That is definitely a good way to go about getting more knowledge and getting to that dad 3.0 version of
Right.
fatherhood.
We need this because there are plenty of us out here doing a good job, but we need to learn how to do it better or improve. A lot of men don't know how to, but they're afraid or ashamed sometimes to ask. So platforms like this can let them tune in, and nobody have to see them or even know them, but they can listen and glean from it and become better fathers.
Incognito help, basically.
Incognito, right? Yeah, incognito help,
Incognito
right?
help.
Yeah,
Yeah. What are some of the areas in fatherhood that you are winning? Like like man, I know I'm doing this right, and now I'm seeing the fruits of what I did today.
education, stressing that education. I saw, man, that thing just devastate a part of my family, even me, man. Being in Brooklyn, and you know we didn't do school, we did hooky parties, and just being a knucklehead and messing up your grades. I could have done so much better, but that whole lack of focus and all sorts of stuff just taking me away from that. I stress that, man, and invest in whatever it is we need to get you where you need to get to. So far, I can say that both Junior and Grace are college graduates. Rachel is graduating from high school next year. Emmanuel is on his way out. Great students. Never had that issue to where, I have to stress or worry. I push that. I promote that. And again, with the help of my wife, who is a educator, she is, I mean, again, the best at it. So we have stressed that, and then we've seen it work because nobody can take that from you. Once you
Right.
once you got it, you got it. It's yours.
Very difficult
And
to unlearn.
yeah, yeah. And so we leave the next generation better than where we were. Our parents left us better, so now we take the next generation to another place.
It reminds me of another guest we had a couple of weeks ago, Carlton Lanley, originally from Jamaica, raised to New York, and that was his thing too, education. His kids were heavily involved in sports and other activities, but he really stressed the fact that if those grades not right, you cannot do any of this other stuff, and
Mhm.
because he
Mhm.
saw what
Mhm.
education did for him,
Mm,
he really stressed for education with his kids. And on a personal level, one of the things that I strongly believe that is our job or our duty as dads is to make sure that the next generation has a better head start.
yes,
You know,
yes,
wherever we started, when it was time for us to start, wherever we started, it is our job for them to have a better head start.
yes,
So
yes,
I
yes,
really
yes.
strongly believe that. Any last words for fathers out there who, might be struggling with letting their kids have that level of independence that they basically need once it comes to a certain age, or any other words that you might have in general for fathers out there that you feel like, hey, I have this tool here and I think dads who listen to the podcast can benefit from this.
Trust what you have put in them to eventually show up. Trust the work that you did to eventually show up. Trust that what you have placed in your kids, that it's going to show up eventually. It's going to manifest itself eventually. And once you begin to trust that, you'll see that, yeah, they might deviate a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. We all done it, and we still do it at times, but they're going to eventually find their way back. They're going to eventually come back to a place. So don't be afraid when you see your kids, oh man, they made a bad decision. We all do. Oh, they made it. That's life. They have to go through certain things, and we have to trust that eventually they come to their senses. And just buckle down and keep fathering, man. There's no book that can get you to be no perfect father. It's every day a new lesson that you have to take on, learn, develop, and keep fathering, man. That's all I got.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for coming on to the Dadography podcast. Definitely a conversation filled with valuable insights. I do leave here today with a lot more tools and on a personal level, knowing some things about you that I didn't know before. To be honest, just appreciating you more. I see your kids, I know your kids, and whenever I see them, I see good kids, I see good people, so
Mm-hmm.
I knew there was something there. And I knew there was something there that had to do with an involved father. So we
Mm-hmm.
really thank you for sharing your story. And hopefully, well, not hopefully, I know there are some dads out there who will benefit from this. Thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, and I'll continue to listen.
Thank you, Uncle Dennis. Fathers, if you must commit and make a vow to something, commit and make a vow to fathering. Grow your circle and meet other dads who can put more tools and better tools in your toolbox. Why not listen to our podcast? Trust the process and trust that your seeds will eventually blossom. Be a fearless father.
Thank you for listening. See you guys next week.